I think it would be better to cultivate a good inner state of being rather than an outer state. Our culture promotes external success, but such things can be taken away, whereas internal is really all you have. I don't think enough emphasis is placed on internal success or well-being. I mean, it's important to have your needs met, but beyond that, I think we need to invest within. It's no different than anything in life, ups and downs. Well, today I want to share something that was shared by another channel. It's a look at the narrative, and although I usually question the narrative, I want to take a different approach today. I thank you for being here. God bless and welcome. So of course we're told of the native people, and a story is painted for a very primitive way of life. A way of life that I really respected, still do, living in harmony with nature. I also was inspired by the early pioneers, as we're told in our history. The log cabin, hard-working, little house on the prairie living pioneers. But the more I do this research, the more I'm let down by these ideals or ideas that we've been sold about our history. Today the channel Jared Boosters has shared a video telling the mainstream historical account on Memphis, Tennessee. And what we see flashing on the screen are old world photos of Memphis, looking like an old, sophisticated city, at least 200 years old. And what I found is, as he was reading off the historical accounts, that the story wasn't too far off of what may actually have happened. When you look at it through the lens that we do in this community, it's to say that this same narrative could be read off, and if you had pictures of teepees, bows and arrows, and such things, the story would read completely differently. But when looking at it through this understanding, as I'm sure you have if you've found your way to this channel, the story is a lot more intriguing than we would be led to believe. What we see when we look at the earliest depictions of these natives, oftentimes they're white and black and dress in a very elegant way, a style that I have never seen before. Kind of resembling the native flares that we see. It might be the feathers and beads, but very modern, almost like a suit and tie version of the Native American attire. Of course, we're told that these are mound builders, and their cities were mere villages, but it seems like these mounds are just buried structures. If you look at the location of Memphis, Tennessee, it's right along the Mississippi River, and essentially feeding into all sorts of other rivers and canal systems. A perfect hub. And what we're told is in the 1600s, with the arrival of the French and English, the natives began to be sold into slavery. We're told the Choctaw and the Chickasaw switched sides often, unifying with the British, sometimes the French, and in the 1700s, of course, we're told the British defeat the French. And just so many wars, war after war after war, and really struggling. These wars lasting much longer than they seemingly should have if the Native Americans were as primitive as we're led to believe. In 1818, we're told, the federal government officially purchased the area of Memphis from the Chickasaw. So really, 1818, you're making a deal, and they accept? I mean, according to the narrative, this should be primitive land, even though I'm showing photos, again, that show a city that is at least 200 years old. In my opinion, there's no doubt this city is part of the skirmish. Otherwise, there's no need to come out here with horse and wagon and wage wars in this wild frontier. Nobody would waste their resources doing such a thing in this time period. We're told the city is officially incorporated in 1826 and named Memphis, after the city in Egypt along the Nile River, featuring a regular grid of streets interrupted by 4 massive town squares. The town squares still exist today as giant parks. I took a screenshot of one of those. You can see what looks like the outline of a star fort. And at this point, Native American cultures were forced to leave their lands, moving west on what was known as the Trail of Tears. It had one of the largest populations in the South prior to the end of the Civil War. It was the main station for the Underground Railroad, and suddenly they're totally bustling, exporting cotton through South Carolina to London. And now in 1862, Memphis was captured by the Union during the massive Battle of Memphis. After the Union regained control, thousands of slaves and their families fled from plantations in Memphis. In 1866, there was the reconstruction of Memphis. In 1866, Tennessee is readmitted to the Union. Memphis Cotton Exchange, the largest in America, opened in 1873. And then in 1873, you have what's called the Yellow Fever. This reminds me of the stories in Europe of the Black Death, and now we have another cataclysm, the Yellow Fever. So it's just been nothing but war and pushing out the natives, and then they set up shop, they lay out a street system and parks, and then they have this yellow fever with the highest fatality rate of any inland city in America. They lose a huge chunk of the population again. If the war wasn't enough, now we have this yellow fever. And finally, the remaining people abandon the city. At this point, Memphis goes bankrupt and is reabsorbed into the state of Tennessee's jurisdiction. They consider it a simple tax district until 1893, when they build a bridge across the Mississippi. And then things get rolling again. They put in city sewer lines. A man comes in and starts buying everything up for pennies on the dollar. They built a bank. And then in 1900, they have the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. My God. And the rest is history. So what the hell really happened here? And what kind of weapons were they using? How advanced were these natives really? And I think this is a good case for what was really going on. How these cities were emptied. Part war, part fevers. A complete wipeout, a reset in the late 1800s. And we often talk about Salt Lake City, San Francisco, Oregon being some of the late blooming states. But this, in their words. But again, they weren't giving us these words coupled with these images of what seems to be an old and advanced city. We often look at the aftermath of these cities and question what happened. But here we're told in a recent narrative, some kind of picture is painted for us, heavily distorted, but I think the true story can be found within. Okay, how could I not check out this Tennessee Expo? After all that, the wars and the yellow fevers, the displacing of a people, it's party time. Here we go. A little look at a couple of the buildings at the Tennessee Expo. This makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you have a pyramid? This man doesn't seem to enjoy his outfit. Boss, this feels a little tight around the shoulders. Are you listening to me? Why are you looking down at the ground? Shut up and hold still for the picture. Here another little Tennessee building, all by itself, looking kind of sad. And here we have some fairgoers. I shall need to hem my dress when I get home. It's been dragging on these dirty streets all day. I wish I had an umbrella too. And here a little look at the expo building. A man directing traffic here in the streets with his little flag. And here another forgotten expo building. Really just looking like an old factory. A giant rose window up here, cathedral style, glass. And of course, fully lit up. We can actually see a moon on this evening. And here a little newspaper article. The Memphis Industrial Expo being completed except for the decorations. It will be illuminated and the gas will be turned on when the inauguration will take place. Addresses will be delivered by these military cats, weird, and citizens and strangers, both ladies and gentlemen, are invited to attend. God, I wonder what makes you a stranger in this time period. Here again, we can see that expo building with the rose window. Tech all over this thing, just overly teched out. And no doubt, a 1,000,000 square foot building, seeming really out of place. How would you even find this expo? Well, you might see an ad like this in the paper or glued onto a pole. The floral hall with a glass roof, power hall. 25 cents to get in. And it looks like it runs for 1 month, October 1st to October 31st. And this is just absolutely reminiscent of San Francisco, as we can see here in the oldest photo of San Francisco. 3 years after becoming a gold mining boomtown, the city looks like this. Very European. And these people, possibly wearing tights, do not look like gold miners or the families of gold miners. And it should be noted that the gold mining story is absolutely stupid. We're told the gold was 100 miles away. 100 miles. Driving in my car that will take 2.5 hours. In a horse and buggy, maybe 2 or 3 days. Why would you be mining the gold on the other side of the Sierras and bringing it to San Francisco? What a waste of time. Not to mention dangerous. Opens up the opportunity for looting. No, you would develop the city around the gold. This should have been built out 100 miles away. You're not mining gold in your tights and knapsack and building a city 100 miles away. It makes absolutely no sense. A horse and buggy commute? No. But what else are they going to tell us? That was their best explanation as to why this city is fully built out in 3 years. This city has nothing to do with gold mining. This is not a gold mining camp. But over here we have wars as well. The Mexican-American wars, great fires, earthquakes. And I think they've added so many cataclysmic events to our history that it confuses us. It's so much that our minds are overloaded. And the average inquirer of history would just accept it. But in my opinion, I don't think there were all these fires. In past videos, I've shown you models that they made of the city and set on fire. But as a channel viewer recently pointed out in a comment, where these fires were located, we're told, today we can see old world buildings standing there. What look like buildings over 200 years old that were never touched by fire. And I must agree, the city does not appear to have burned. But yet a people similar to Memphis have clearly been either removed or displaced from some sort of event. The city of San Francisco essentially changed hands, and the first pictures we see are of this transition. A rather primitive people surrounded by buildings that could easily be seen in Europe with a much older lifespan. Again, I think our book destroys this narrative in a way that has never been presented. I don't think they imagined that anybody would pick through their stories with a fine-tooth comb, pick through their photos and find buildings completed that should not be complete according to their timelines. And who are these people? Not ordinary Americans. I feel as if these photos are simply staged. I think this child reveals that. This child knows this is all a bunch of BS. Look at this planter, how old it is. Look how weathered this railing is. This was not just built for a fair, and this is not temporary. And this child is completely bored. Here, of course, I've jumped to Chicago, and I agree with the child. As beautiful as everything is, what a total bore. I mean, if I was here, I'd be looking at this light pole. And what kind of tech is this? Looks like some free energy tech. I mean, it's all beautiful, but it doesn't look fun. It doesn't look like these people are having a good time. And what are you going to do with all this building? And this one back here, pay your 25 cents and just stroll around here? Here we're back in California, same story. And what we show in this book, breaking down the financial figures, the fair would have cost 30 times at a minimum of what we're told it cost. And they took a loss with even what we're given as financials. They blow over their budget 30 times before even building the buildings, showing that it would be impossible. And it is ridiculous. There is so much detail going on here for a temporary fair. And here you go, here's what they do with the inside of the buildings. Just stupid. The building is nicer than the things on display. Here they made a cafe under this tower, the Belle Vista Cafe. There you go. And here we can get a look at this tower lit up at night, the cafe underneath here. And look at this detail in this building. Look at these columns. Different styles for each column? Can you imagine the mold for this? The mold! Even if I could find a mold like this, I don't think it would ever turn out so nice. And this is not some temporary plaster. And I challenge anyone to replicate something like this. Just a little piece. And of course the idea of them being temporary simply falls apart, because this building is still standing. They turned it into a library, and in my opinion, at this point, it's pretty much irrefutable. We broke down the World's Fair financially to make a case, and this case now applies to every city, every fair, and every building, such as all of these seen here. America is not just old, but it was absolutely sophisticated, and it advanced in every way. All that's missing are the airships flying around and the free energy tech functioning, the roads not covered with mud, but quite possibly being canals lined with brick. I'm not going to call this part 2. This was just a little bonus. I'll do a more in-depth part 2 of the book. But for today, I think I've said enough. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for joining me. I love you all. God bless. And I'll see you next week.